Okay, so take out your notes and take out the random number table. The random number table, I will tell you, you probably will not need it, okay? But I need to show you how it works just in case it comes up on the AP exam, okay? So what we talked about, yes, it's all right here. I am right here. It's waiting for you, Logan, but I'm not waiting on you, buddy.
I'm sorry.
We were all here the other day. We were all here where we were supposed to be on Friday.
I had a wedding.
What's up? There's something wrong with my car. My mom's trying to call me. Yeah. You know, so I'm redoing the video because I didn't think my recording was very good last hour. How's this one going so far?
Yeah. Has it started already?
Oh yeah, this is all on, this is all on the recording. So, yeah. All right. Anyways, what we were talking about last week, we were talking about methods of sampling. Okay. So you have a simple random sample. That's called the SRS. Not to be confused with the stratified random sample, which uses the same letters, but that's not called an SRS. So the simple random sample is literally where you could say, I put all the names of the individuals in a hat and I draw 4 of them out, okay? The stratified random sample is where you say, wait a second, I think maybe males and females might respond differently. So you separate them first, and then you might say, I'm going to get 2 from here and 2 from here. The cluster sample is a little bit more difficult for people. And what I'm going to do tomorrow is do an exercise that hopefully will help emphasize the difference between these. But a cluster sample is literally where you take your population and you kind of just, and I use the example that you just like grid it out, okay? And I just said, let's say we gridded something out to be 16 clusters, and you just say, well, I'm going to randomly pick out of 1 through, say, oh, number 2, oh, number 9. And then you use everybody in group 2 and everybody in group 9. The issue on that's difficult because you have to make the assumption that each subgroup, group 2 and group 9, both reflect the properties or the characteristics of the entire population, okay? And just even thinking about, you know, if I gridded out the L'Anse Creuse Public Schools area, and if I literally just drew lines and I gridded it out, would the people in group 2 have the same characteristics as the people in group 9? They might not, okay? So you got to be really careful on the cluster sample. We'll talk more about that. Like I said, tomorrow we'll do a little exercise that hopefully will help emphasize the difference. But how do we generate those random numbers? How do we generate, oh, I want group number 2 and I want group number 9. Now, we already know how to use our calculators, but I want to go through how to use this random number table, which is how we did it when I was younger, because we didn't have calculators back then that did all this, okay? So these are literally just random digits that a computer has generated, okay? I said here, use table D. In the back of your book is another one of these. This was just one I found on the internet, okay? What you need to understand, first of all, on these random number or random digit tables, the blank columns and the blank rows, they mean nothing, okay? It's not like these are all grouped or these 5 are grouped. The lines, the blank lines are just there to help your eyes kind of follow where you're at. You have to picture that these are just literally all in order. I mean, if we could put them all in one long line, we would do that, okay? The white space is nothing except to help you refocus your eyeballs, okay? So if you have to use the random number table, and this is what your book calls labeling. Labeling is how you name the individuals, okay? In this case, we have 28 hotels, okay? Family-friendly places to stay over spring break. They're going to call 4 randomly chosen hotels to ask about amenities for families with children. They alphabetize their list. So again, you could put those 28 hotel names in a hat and just say 1, 2, 3, 4. There they are, 4 randomly picked. You could do that, okay? But to use a random number table, you have to number them. Here's the part that people mess up. On the random number table, the number of digits has to match. So you have to go to the last one in the list, 28. The number 28 has 2 digits, and therefore everybody has to have 2 digits. And that's why Casa del Mar is not just called 9, it's called 09, okay, 08, 07. If you had 128 hotels, then everybody has to have 3. They would be called 001 and 002. Everybody has to have the same number of digits, okay? That's the part that people mess up. You don't have to do that on your calculators. And I think that's why people mess it up. We're so accustomed to using our calculators where you don't have to worry about it. But if you're doing this paper method, you have to start with everybody gets the same number of digits. Okay, so we're not going to use table D. We're going to use the table that I gave you. Now, literally, when I was in school, this is what we did. We put our random digits on the desk, and we literally just went, I guess, okay, I'll start right there. You literally just dropped your finger and said, okay, I'm going to start right there. That was our way of picking a random spot, okay? So I'm going to go right there. I'm going to start right here. Okay, so you want to do your own, you can, or if you want to follow along and do mine. All right, so first of all, 28. All right, 28. So I'm using hotel number 28. For sure. The next one, 89. Guess what? I don't have a hotel 89, so skip it. But you have to go 2 at a time. Now, here's where people will mess up. Some people say, oh, so I'm just supposed to use 1. No, 2 digits at a time. 1, 1. So the next one would be 11. Then 21. Then 06. There's my 4. Now, this is where I randomly dropped my finger in third hour. So they went with number 14, cool. 40, too big. 17, cool. 45, too big. 37, too big. And then we hit a 14 again. Well, we had to skip that one too because we'd already used it. So even though it wasn't too big, we skipped it. And then we went 82, too big. 04, got it. 52, too big. 18. No, that was 48. That was a skip. 78 was a skip. 00. Skip. I didn't have a 00. 76, 59. And we finally got to number 11. So we had to go a lot longer on that one until we found 4 unique hotels. So then I put here, you would have to be able to explain the process. Okay, if you were doing this, you would literally have to tell someone, and this is how I explain it to someone is pretend you had to tell somebody else how to do this. You would have to first tell someone, you need to number the hotels from 01 to 28. Now, you also could have you could have started at 00. I could have called Aloha Kai. I could have called that 00, in which case I would have ended at 27. You can do that. And then I would have used 00. Okay, that's a legit number. Okay, so you had to tell someone, how did you number? How did you label it? Okay, and then you would say start at a random location on the number table. Look for 4 unique 2-digit numbers. You had to think about it. Somebody else did not know how to do this. You had to tell them to start somewhere random. You had to tell someone, I need 4 numbers, but there have to be 2 digits at a time. And you have to say unique, because they have to know that if they get the 14 twice, they skip it. Or at the very least, if you don't want to say unique, just say skip repeated numbers. Okay, somehow tell someone if you hit a repeat, you can't use it. Okay, so look for 4 unique 2-digit numbers. Identify those individuals, and then that's when you would conduct your survey. But again, my guess is you won't have to do that. I seriously don't think you will. My guess is you might have something on the AP test about this, but you could just use your random number generator on your calculator, okay? So if I were to do this on my calculator, I would do it the same way that we've done before. I would say, well, I need to generate random integers, and I don't have to call it 0, 1. I'll just say from 1 to 28, and I need 4 of them. Okay, there they are. I need hotel 27, 26, 5, and 15. I now have done my random sample, and now I would move on and say, now it's time for me to conduct my survey. Okay? And let me just kind of redo this until I'm going to see when that gets a repeat. Okay, let's say I did this one right here. If I were doing this, I'd say, okay, I want hotel 28. I want hotel 8. I want hotel 4. I can't use 8 twice. And then I just do it again and say, okay, then I'll go for hotel number 2. He replaces my repeat. You don't have to replace the whole list. You just do it again and replace your repeat. Okay, you do not have to completely start over, though I guess you could because it's supposed to be a random sample anyways. Okay, so, and by the way, I did not seed and I reset my calculator. Those are the exact same ones when I wanted to come up with a repeat. That's the exact same thing I had last time. Okay, just as a comment on if you ever reset your calculator, okay, if you ever reset your calculator, you may come back and just keep repeating yourself, okay, because it will go back to the default method. All right. I said you should know how to seed. I put the instructions on the back of the vocab and tech page in case you need to know how to do that again. It's there. All righty. So now, because of the confusion between the stratified and the cluster samples, I threw another example on for that, okay? So the manager of a sports arena wants to learn more about the financial status of the people who are attending a game. He would like to give a survey to a representative sample of the more than 20,000 fans who are in attendance. Ticket prices for the game vary a great deal. Seats near the bottom, the 100 level, are as much as $200 a piece. And as you go around the top, also sections 1 through 28, but now these are the cheaper seats, okay, for as little as $25 each. And yes, they are divided. There are 28 all the way around here. Now, careful on that though too, because if you notice section 2, there's only one sector of 102, but notice that there are actually 2 sectors that make up section 2 in the upper bowl, okay? When you get to section 3, there are 3 sectors that make up section 3 in the upper bowl. Okay, so you have to be careful on the diagram here, but all right. So let's start by talking about a stratified sample. Remember, a stratified sample means you have identified several subgroups that might have something in common. Okay, so if you just randomly generated 4 sections, okay, so you could say if there's 28 down here and there's 28 around here, there's 56. I could pull up my calculator and say, I need from 1 to 56, I need you to give me 4 sections. Okay, so I would say section 2, so there, section 18, and this of course would be assuming that after I called this section 28, when I start up here, this would be section 29 and 30 and 31. Okay, I'd have to set up my labeling, okay? But do you understand that if you do something like that, is it possible that you could have all 4 of your selections in the same general area? Okay, it could happen. All right. So now as it turns out, I have 2 lower bowls and 2 upper bowls. Why would that be a good way to go about this? 2 lower bowls and 2 upper bowls.
They're like equal, they're like 2 equal things, like how we do in subdivision.
All right, so again, if you're trying to figure out what the financial status of the guests here, if these people are all paying like $200 a ticket, we might be able to make an assumption that maybe they're more financially stable than the people who are only paying $25 a ticket. Now, is that a true assumption? We don't know that. But the manager might say, but I think these guys all have something in common. They're willing to spend $200 a ticket. These people are not. So in this case, if you're doing a stratified sample, we're going to keep the 100 and the 200 levels separate. And if I want to now survey 4 areas, I'm going to get 2 out of here and 2 out of here. So I would come back to this and I would say, I am going to randomly generate from 1 to 28, because that's how many sections there are all the way around. And I only want 2 this time because I only want to do the bottom tier. So I'm going to use 18 and 6. So I would use 118 and 106. So now I know I got 2 sections from the big money area. And then I'll do it again, 28 and 21. So I'm going to go to 228 and 221 in the upper bowl. So now I know I got 2 sections of people who aren't willing to pay as much money. Now, they brought up the issue last hour. They said, well, Mrs. Ferrari, but what about those corners where, what if you had picked 202? All of a sudden, you actually have a larger group of people potentially, right? So that could cause overrepresentation. Or look at section 203. There's 3 sectors. Now, if you're concerned about that, well, then we might not be able just to number it 1 to 28. Maybe we're going to have to number this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and just renumber it all the way around. So you're not going only up to 28. Maybe you now have to go up to 35. This is why at some point on the homework, they ask you, how will you label or how will you name your individuals? It's important to think about that. Okay, are we just going to go with these numbers or are we going to renumber it for our purposes? Okay, but what I want you to recognize here is a stratified sample means you have looked at this and said, I need to make sure that I get some cheap seats and some expensive seats. This would be a way to do it. Separate them, and then you randomly sample out of each. So now on a cluster sample means you pre-organize into subgroups that you think overall are representative. So when I look at this overall, I look at it as I have some people who came to my game who like to spend lots of money. I have some people who came to my game who don't like to spend lots of money. So when I get my sample, I want some people who like to spend a lot of money and some people who don't. So how you could do a cluster sample is now we could use the numbered sections themselves. So we could say, okay, if I know I want 4 sections, well, every number actually has an upper and a lower. So this time I really would just go for 1 to 28 and only 2 of them, 9 and 7. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to section 109 and 209, and I'm going to call that a cluster. And then I'm going to go to 107 and 207, and I'm going to call that a cluster. So now when I come up here, I'm going to ask all of these people, and I'm going to ask all of these people. So I'm still getting 4 sectors, and I still am assured of getting 2 from the top and 2 from the bottom. Now, in this case, which is better? I'm not sure there's an answer which is better. Okay, I'm not sure. Other than last hour when we did this, we actually ended up with One was like over here and one was way over here. And you know, sometimes you go to games and like there are better seats in end zones or on certain places. Okay, so these, even though it was random, they're awfully close together, right? So maybe this would have been a better way to go about it so that we had a better chance of getting all over the place.
What does it mean, like, in the cluster sample definition, you're like heterogeneously?
Because if this is now called a cluster, okay, this is now called a cluster. That cluster is heterogeneous, meaning I have now a whole mix of people. People who spend money, people who don't spend money. So that cluster reflects the entire population, which was some people spend money, some people don't spend money. The cluster should reflect the whole population. So if the population is some spend money and some don't, your cluster should also be some spend money, some don't. Okay, as opposed to the stratified is you keep them separate. You spend money, you don't. Okay. And by the way, you guys are awfully young. You might not even know this. This actually was the diagram of Joe Louis Arena. You ever been there? Before they knock it down? Yep, that was the Joe right there. So, all right. So, we're done with sampling now. Let's say we now know how to sample. We know how to do a good job sampling. We're going to start talking about non-sampling errors. All right, in the video, the narrator said getting a random sample is the cornerstone of accurate sampling, but just as important is accurately designing the survey itself. So, sampling error is exactly that. It's error you make when you sample, okay? Obvious, voluntary, and convenient sampling. Okay, when you do those two things, you are making sampling error. You are using a bad method. Okay, errors made in the sampling process. Under coverage is when you think you've identified, you're not doing convenience, you're not doing voluntary, you think you're doing a good method, but certain subgroups are either over or under represented. Okay, that would be the election example from the video. Okay, they thought they were doing a good sample. They did a random sample. They randomly came up with phone numbers. They called people. They said, this is all random. But back in 1936, only wealthy, rich people had phones. So they were overrepresenting wealthy people who tended to vote Republican. They were underrepresenting people who were not doing very well, who at the time were very democratically based and supporting FDR. And that's why they totally miscalculated who might be our next president. Okay, they thought they were doing a good job, but they made a sampling error and the result was under coverage. So non-sampling error is exactly what it says. Errors that occur after the sampling process. Errors that occur after the sampling has taken place. So now we really do assume we did a good job. We randomly identified people. We might have done a stratified, we might have done a cluster, we might have just done a simple random sample. We did a good job. We rock. But then you have the non-response bias. And that's exactly what it says. I should say some individuals refuse to answer. Okay, I told you the story about I get those emails. Please participate in our survey. I got new furniture in my living room a couple weeks ago. Dear Lori Ferrari, please take a moment to finish a survey about, your new couch. I haven't done that one yet either. Like, they want me to take a picture of it and all that stuff. It's like, I'm still sitting in my inbox. But okay, I am non-response right there. I have been randomly identified as a customer, someone who purchased something from Lazy Boy, and I haven't answered them. I am non-response. They did everything they could. They went through their little database of all the people who bought furniture in October, and I didn't answer them. Okay, I am non-response. Response bias is you've been properly identified during the random sample. You do respond, but some responses are unreliable. And let me just put it more bluntly. Some people lie. All right, here we go. Taking a survey right now. How many of you have tried marijuana? Yeah, you're going to tell me the truth? You're going to tell me the truth? Yeah, I wouldn't tell you the truth either. Okay. Now, it's a crazy example, but people tend to remember that. That is response bias. Okay, that's response bias. Even in an anonymous survey, I could see someone being like, oh, she might recognize my handwriting. Okay, so you lie. So that's response bias. And the last two, I don't think they really need an explanation. The wording of the questions. In the video, they said, keep it simple. Don't try to confuse people. Don't ask them things that they obviously don't know about, okay? Order of the questions. You might think that that's not a big deal, but in the video, they said at that New Hampshire polling station, there was the big sign on the wall. So someone read the questions exactly in the right order. You don't change a word. Don't add any adjectives or adverbs to make it sound better, okay? Just everything. All of this, as crazy as it sounds, it can impact the way somebody answers a question, okay? All right, so on this last page, I just said each of the following contains a source of error in a survey. Label each as sampling or non-sampling error, describe the error, and if possible, we'll try to describe the potential bias. And remember by that generally means direction. Can you tell someone when all is said and done, if your results are not accurate, if they don't accurately reflect the population, why? What direction did we over or underrepresent? Okay. A police department in a large urban area wants to know how African-American residents of the city feel about police service. They prepare a questionnaire with several questions about the police. A sample, and we'll assume a random sample of 300 mailing addresses in predominantly African-American neighborhoods is chosen, and a police officer is sent to each address to administer the questionnaire to an adult living there. And if you remember in the video, they even talked about, to make it really random, they will automatically say the person who had the most recent birthday, for example. Okay, so they can't pick and choose who answers. Okay, so what do you think? Just tell me what you think is bad.
Well, I think that it's kind of leading like response bias because if they're asking opinions of the police officer, and the police officer is collecting it, then they're going to lie.
Okay, response bias. Absolutely. I agree with you. They might lie. Okay, we think about everything going on lately. Okay, yeah, if a police officer is standing there on their porch, they can say, yeah, you guys suck. Okay, no, they're probably not going to do that. So yes, it would be a perfect thing that it's response bias. In which case, do we have sampling or non-sampling error? Okay, that's non-sampling error. They could have chosen that house totally appropriately in their random sample, but now they have potential response bias. I also said, what about potential non-response bias? What would non-response be in this situation? Pardon?
They don't want to talk to the police officer.
Okay. So in this situation, they don't even answer the door, right? They see a police officer on the porch, and what do? run out or at least they maybe don't run, but they're just like, you know what, I'm not answering the door. I do that when salespeople come to my door. I literally been known to crawl through my house and they don't see me looking through a window. Okay? So, in this case, the bias results may be more favorable toward the police because the only results they're going to get potentially, not only, but they might get a lot of people who lie to them and say, yeah, you guys are doing a great job. Or the people who don't think they're doing a great job just don't answer. So your direction is we're going to end up with a bias towards more people favor the police than maybe what is actually the case. Okay? You know, so maybe in this case, you would have to then say, all right, maybe we have to come up with a different plan of how to administer the survey instead of going to their door. Okay? All right. So B, a question on a survey reads, which of these best represents your opinion on gun control? The following choices are provided. A, the government should confiscate our guns. B, we have the right to bear arms.
I feel like Stanley, they're not really running to the answer. Like, oh wait, it makes sense in my head, but I don't know. Like, there's two options, but like, what if someone's in between that's not going to answer? Or
Okay.
They're just going to pick one.
All right. So there's, you guys know, like they have scales on something. They're maybe you feel like you ought to have an option of I don't really have an opinion here. I'm somewhere up the middle. Okay. Depends on the situation. I don't know, but let's back up a step. Is that sampling or non-sampling error? Okay, that is still non-sampling error. Because if you're the one standing there with the survey, you still might have been selected like I was from Lazy Boy or OnStar. I was just still randomly selected. But now all of a sudden you're going to answer the question, you're like, neither one of those feels like me. I have no opinion. Okay? So now all of a sudden that would be a form of response bias because now if you're forcing me to pick, you're forcing me to pick one or the other. Neither one of those really represents me. Okay? So I would say response bias is possible, but I also would say wording of the question. Now either one of these, I'm not quite sure the direction because I feel like either one you're being pushed to one end or the other, but they're both kind of inflammatory almost, okay? If you really believe in gun control, confiscating, okay, even if you believe in gun control, do you really think the police have to go around and confiscate them all? That sounds a little harsh, okay? Now, and if you don't believe that we need stronger gun control, you know, we have the right to bear arms. Okay, now you have people like, you know, they're waving their don't tread on me flags and, you know, about the Constitution, right? They kind of gave only these two extremes and they're both almost like making people like angry in one way or the other, okay? So, yeah, I'm not sure which direction I would go here, but I definitely, I would think there's a better way to provide options here, okay? Campus food service at a college wants to know how students feel about their food. They hand out a survey during Friday morning breakfast between 7 and 9 a.m.
Isn't this sampling because you're going to hand it out, but it's an option?
All right. It is definitely sampling error, but the way you just phrased that, you're confusing. Okay, so, all right, so sampling error. Okay, it is convenience. Okay, now we're back to, and Lacey, the reason I stopped you there is you kind of were doing a combination of convenience and voluntary. You're right. If you go to hand a survey to someone, they have now been selected due to convenience, but when they don't answer the survey, when they just say thanks but no thanks, now that now becomes non-response, non-sampling error, okay? Now, the biggest thing was you shouldn't be doing convenience to begin with, okay? You shouldn't be doing convenience. And yes, what we have here is we're going to have people only there from 7 to 9. All right. So we have underrepresentation of people who like to sleep in. Okay. But can you also give me something, a different reason that would give us a slant, give us a bias?
They're only asking people about breakfast and they want to know about all their food.
Okay. They're only getting information about breakfast. They want to know about all their food. All right. People couldn't, they might not be there.
Let's say a lot of like juniors and students like online classes or freshmen, sophomores go.
All right. So maybe maybe they have 8 a.m. classes. So again, you guys are still kind of sticking to the fact that the time is a constraint. There's something else.
If they don't like the food, they're probably not going to be eating breakfast.
That to me is the biggest issue. That to me is the biggest issue. Even if you are an early riser and you want breakfast, if their food sucks, you're going to Taco Bell for a breakfast burrito. Okay? Yes, there's no doubt by only doing from 7 to 9, they definitely could improve this by saying, we're going to get some people at breakfast, we'll get some people at lunch, and we'll get some people at dinner. That is an improvement. But even that, you still have the issue of no one's going to your cafeteria if your food is horrible. Okay? So if they're in the cafeteria, it's probably because they think your food's okay. They like those powdered scrambled eggs. Okay? Which is what they often use. Yeah, okay. So, results may be more favorable toward the food because you're sampling people who are willing to eat it. Like I said, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the time issue is not important, but that actually could be easily solved. I'm not sure that going to breakfast, lunch, and dinner is going to solve the issue of we're still only sampling people who are willing to come eat this garbage, which, by the way, the food is way better than it was when I was in school. It is. All right. One question on a survey asks, what is the most important problem facing our nation? And then the next question says, do you approve or disapprove of the way our current president is handling his duties? Did I use this one last year with you guys? I might have. Now, it's almost a giveaway, the fact that I gave you 2 questions. All right. Order of the questions is the issue here. And if order of the questions is the issue, is that sampling or non-sampling? Okay, that is still non-sampling. The bottom line is you could have gone through all the appropriate sampling techniques. I went to the upper bowl, I went to the lower bowl, I went to the end zone, I got freshmen, I got sophomores, you got a little bit of everyone. But now all of a sudden, think about the first thing you ask is what is the most important problem facing our nation? You now have that person thinking of something bad. And then you say, by the way, how do you think our president's doing? Okay, so now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, he sucks. Okay? If you ask someone first, scale of 1 to 10, 10 being president's doing a great job, 1, president's not doing a great job, where would you rate the president? Give them an opportunity to give an unbiased response. And then you could say, of the problems facing our nation, what do you think is the most important? But if you ask that first, you have already put a negative thought into their head. All right, so in this case, the bias is results may be less favorable towards the president because bad image was provoked first. Just for a quick way of saying it. And then the last one is also super easy. It's a giveaway. I even said, you properly apply a stratified sampling technique. So I've already told you you've done proper sampling. So this must be a non-sampling error. You identify 88 rooms in a hotel and say, I want you to fill out the survey. You ever stay in a hotel, they shove stuff under your door in the morning, like it's time to check out? And maybe they throw a survey under your door. But only 30 rooms complete the survey when they pay their bill. Okay, that is officially what non-response is right there. Now you officially have non-response. The rooms have been properly identified, but only 30 of them took the time to do it. The other 58 are like Miss Ferrari, they skipped it. Okay, now, could I say which way the bias is for sure? Not for sure, but if I had to guess, who will be most likely to take the time to fill out the survey? Okay, if something bad happened, your shower didn't get warm enough, your sink dripped all night, so you didn't sleep very well, room service was late, there were no ice cubes in the little mini refrigerator, okay? Most of the time in this situation, it's going to be super negative. People take the time to respond. I was looking something up. I'm meeting a friend tomorrow in Rochester for dinner. And I said, so I just literally looked up, downtown Rochester restaurants. And so I'm on Yelp and I'm reading all these reviews, and almost every review that popped up first was something negative. And it's like, okay, so you happen to have a bad waitress who took a long time. Or, you guys know all these restaurants are understaffed, so everything's taking longer. And all these reviews, it's like, okay, I felt I couldn't trust any of them, okay? Because they're all voluntary response, and the only people who do voluntary response are the people who care one way or the other. So when they got really mad, they took the time to fill out the survey, okay? So if I had to guess here, I would say the survey is going to be generally overrepresenting people who had a bad experience at that restaurant or that hotel. That would be my guess. All right, so that is sampling and surveys. We're going to do a little exercise tomorrow, and then after, so like on Wednesday and Thursday, we're going to actually start talking about how we actually conduct statistical experiments. Okay, a little bit different from just giving a survey. So tomorrow will be one of those days where you get points just for showing up and participating.